It leads me, of course, to one of the things we talked about in committee, and that is this. Only in Trenton, and I mean this with all due respect, would we suspend reality for fantasy. We come up with a theory that says Atlantic City's having trouble because there's an oversupply in the market, because there's too much convenient gaming, because there's competition in other states. And the way we're going to fix that problem of too much supply and over-competition, we're going to build more casinos. Now, you just think of that in and of itself on its face, and it says to you that, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. But I will say to you now that don't take my word for it. Obviously, you might think to yourself, well, he's from Atlantic County, it's parochial. I want to hear how it affects the entire state. Who are you referring to, Brown? And so I will tell you that every study that has been done thus far has come to the conclusion that this is not North versus South, that this is the state hurting itself. This is the state passing a bill or a resolution, and if the voters were to approve it, which would ultimately wind up in the state receiving less money. Now, these reports go back to 2007, and the first one, of course, was a Christian Capital Advisor study, and they did it on behalf of the Meadowlands. And they found that the primary market for the Meadowlands video lottery terminals alone, this was just video lottery terminals, came within the primary market for Atlantic County, and they concluded that it would wind up cannibalizing the revenue you're already receiving. But that goes back to 2007, so there was another one in 2013, the American Gaming Association. And their conclusion was it is very hard, if not impossible, to grow the gambling market, which confirms that you have a finite number of people who are going to gamble, and building 2 more casinos is not the panacea and not the answer. These are the experts telling you this, not just me, I'm repeating it. In 2014, the Pennsylvania legislature was very smart, and they got their Budget and Finance Committee together, and they did an analysis. Because obviously they have gaming, and they're trying to figure out if they should continue to grow the casinos and if they should add more. And what they found, our neighbor found that each new casino that opens draws from existing casinos and doesn't grow the market. Now, it's our neighbor. They've concluded that opening new casinos only shuffles the deck. But in 2014, Don Ballman, the general manager of Harrah's in Chester, PA, he said the casino market is tapped out and that another casino in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania is unwarranted. His words, it's a defined market. We're at the point where we're just moving customers around, all of us. I don't see that changing with a new site near the stadium or anywhere else. But the studies go on. In 2014, Stockton University concluded that just one casino built in North Jersey would wind up siphoning off up to 45% of the people within New Jersey who gamble in Atlantic City. They also concluded that it will wind up in a loss of revenue out of Atlantic City of up to $500 million. In January 2016, Moody's analysis confirmed earlier reports that North Jersey casinos will simply cause further closure of casinos in the state of New Jersey and wind up being a net loss. In particular, they said this expansion comes at a time when there are 8 new casinos expected to open in the Northeast by the end of 2018, including Philadelphia, which of course is already a major feeder market for Atlantic City. So when you look at it, and what business would not want to, before it competes with itself, do an analysis? Is this going to be in our best interest or is it not? What business would simply go ahead and have reports from independent bodies that all indicate that you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt your own business. Your model is going to go down if you build there. Well, that is all of us. That is our responsibility. So when we look at it, I've heard people say, well, we have to get the gamblers back because they're leaving. We have people who convenience gamble outside of North Jersey, and you're right. There is a percentage of people right now who choose not to drive to Atlantic City. They choose to go to Pennsylvania or Delaware or wherever it may be. But all of the studies indicate there are not enough of them that you'll recapture to overcome the monies that this state will lose in overall revenue from the closures of Atlantic City and from cannibalizing your own market. So the next thing I think it's fair to remind everybody and point out, we say, well, what's happening with New York? Because we have this window of opportunity and we're losing people to New York. So let's rush out. We have to act quickly and build casinos in North Jersey. Well, the reality is everyone agrees that the minute that you approve it and start building it, New York is going to approve them as well, and you're going to have simply increased and sped up the competition that we don't have now. And don't take my word for it. Just as the other studies, we're independent. You look at State Senator Stephen Persky, author of the Casino Control Act and the Casino Control Commission. He pointed out, and this is his quote, expanding gaming in North Jersey is going to do nothing other than contribute even more to the political necessity of New York. New York will not sit back and do nothing if a major casino facility opens in the Meadowlands. A North Jersey casino isn't going to keep any significant number of dollars in New Jersey that otherwise would have gone across the border. It just won't. Sheldon Adelson, owner of Las Vegas Sands, America's largest casino company, said New York will look at a Meadowlands casino and say, we got to open in New York and keep the money in New York. So if we look at it honestly and we look at what other people are saying, not Brown from Atlantic County, but other people who have independent motivations, independent reasons for looking at the situation, they tell us to take pause. They tell us that ultimately you're going to wind up doing yourself more harm than good. But I've heard that there are those who will say, yeah, but we have to create these jobs. And I would say to you that right off the bat, you wind up cannibalizing more jobs than you create. And I understand that there are some building trades out there that have a lot of members, and it can be tempting to want to do the short term and wind up hurting us in the long term. But the reality is, when you're talking to those building trades, in South Jersey right now, what this bill will do is there's $100 million that has been pledged and was about to be contributed towards expanding the Taj Mahal by Carl Icahn, and he made it clear, if you go ahead and pass North Jersey casinos, it makes no sense for me to make that investment. So those are building trades jobs. I'll also point out to you in North Jersey, whether you're in Bergen County where it's a little over 5, or Jersey City where it's a little over 5, South Jersey, it's over 10% unemployment rate. It's over 10%. Foreclosure rate in Atlantic County is the highest in the United States of America. Brought to the committee the other day, newspaper that had over 16 pages, foreclosed properties, over 230 families who are in foreclosure, and that's just that day. So I would say to you, if you're thinking about, unemployment, and I know that every single one of you care about the people of New Jersey. I know every single one of you are not parochial and just say, well, it's good for my district, to heck with them in the South. I know that you care. And I am asking you, because I know that you care, to take into consideration that very fact, that you're talking double-digit unemployment. People are hurting. So it goes a step further. Tony Rodeo, who's the president of Tropicana, said each of the 8 remaining casinos in Atlantic City has two capital improvement plans. One, where there's going to be major investment, and again, for those of you concerned about the building trades, if you want to help the building trades in an area where they need the help, then you would vote no, because you're talking about a plan that is going to be put aside for a second plan if North Jersey casinos become a reality, which feeds into the other reports. You know, listen, during these committee hearings, and I know those in the Judiciary Committee who sat through this before, I appreciate your patience. But if you think about this and you look at it and you're asking yourself, what is the benefit? Why are we doing this? What is the study? The first thing I asked Chair Caputo, and he was a gentleman and he was straightforward, I said, Chair, what report are you relying upon to tell us all this revenue? 2% to this host community, 2% to that host community, this much to the Horsemen, this much to Atlantic City. I said, what are you relying upon? This is great. So, well, we don't have anything. Well, we have 7 reports that have already been prepared that all say that you're going to wind up doing more harm to the state than good. And you have the words of Carl Icahn and Tony Rodeo. If you're talking about creating jobs, then you would want to vote no on this. But take it a step further. The Greater Chamber has done an independent analysis. And when they did that analysis, they looked at and they said, well, what's the overall net gain to the state? How many more jobs are actually going to be created? And they concluded that we're looking at 15,000 additional lost jobs. We're looking at $230 million additional lost wages. Now, ultimately, what they tell us is the casinos that wind up closing down south and the harm that is done down there and the job loss that you have will not be overcompensated for by whatever opens in North Jersey. That's the experts are telling you, not me. And so some may say, well, you know, those families in Atlantic County, they can pack up and head up north for those temporary jobs as long as they last. I just wanted you to think about that. Seriously, 15,000 families. We already have 9,000 that have been a product of the contraction of the market, the true reason that problems are occurring, competition. But now you're going to say to 24,000 people, sell your home that's upside down, pull your kids out of school, leave your neighborhood, and move up to North Jersey to where's the housing community that they're going to be able to reside in? So that's not really realistic, and I know that we all understand that what you do to your brother, you do to yourself. We understand that we're all interconnected here in the state of New Jersey, and although you may be at 5%, you're talking about an area that's at 10%, people are hurting. They're counting on us to look at everybody and not just a select few. Now, it's important, I think, to point out, because one of the things I hear, well, come on, Brown, Atlantic City was given 5 years. And that's just a fallacy. So anybody tries to tell you that, you say, no, I learned the truth. It took 4 years, say 3.5 years from the time that it passed to be implemented. So this 5-year period took 3.5 years for a master plan to be adopted, for people to be hired, for it to be in place. So instead of 5, you're down to 1.5 years. At the 1.5 year mark, my friend Chair Caputo was holding hearings in the Meadowlands for a North Jersey casino. And we're already talking about a North Jersey casino, which brought uncertainty to the market. And when you bring uncertainty to the market, you're not going to get investment. And you say, what's happening with Atlantic City? And I find it hard to believe that they're not getting the revenue that they should. And what's this uncertainty you're talking about? We had and have a plan. And I would say to you, if you think about it, you're all smart people. You all have home, family budgets. You have work budgets. When you decided, when this body decided that they were going to give Atlantic City 5 years, and you're somebody who has money to invest, are you going to invest $30, $40, $50 million, up to $100 million, knowing that in 5 years the whole playing field can be turned upside down and 45% of the people who go there now won't go there anymore? Or are you going to wait? Yes, sir. Thank you. Do I get to come back later? I could. All right. Well, you're ready to get rid of me now. Chair McKeon would just beat me down with a gavel. That's all right. All right. I'm awake. All right. Thank you. And I appreciate the time. And needless to say, and I do apologize, but, you know, I know how we all get busy. And I know how you have a vote and you think predetermined in your mind the way you're thinking about it. And you might not have the time to know that there are 7 studies that say it's a mistake. You might not have the time to know that Atlantic City hasn't been given 5 years. You might not have the time to understand that you're talking about double-digit unemployment and highest foreclosure rate in the country. So when we talk about uncertainty in the market, and I'll be brief on this and move to the next point quickly, before the hearing that was held in North Jersey, the hearing that was held at the Meadowlands after we were supposed to get 5 years, you had the Hard Rock that was looking to open a casino in Atlantic City. They were looking to do that. And then after the hearing, 3 years later, Hard Rock now has a vision for the Meadowlands, which is fine, but it just proves the point that that investment would have been in Atlantic City. It was not truly given 5 years. And there's one last point on this. Atlantic City has generated over $10 billion for the rest of the state in casino tax revenue, and another $375 million through the CRETA. That town and that city and that region has given. So it leads me to these 3 questions. And this is the last part. These questions are the questions that I believe that anybody trying to make a decision of this magnitude would want to ask before you even begin the debate. And the first one, of course, is what is the revenue? What is the amount? I've heard people say $1 billion. I say, hey, that's super. What was that movie with Austin Powers? He said $1 billion. You might as well say whatever you want. But the studies indicate if you are fortunate, it'll be $500 million, and that comes from Moody's. So, okay, we're at $500 million. You say to yourself, well, the next question, what's the tax rate? Shouldn't we know what the tax rate is? Initially, it was going to be 50 to 60%. That's how they were promising to people. 2% here, 2% there. Atlantic City, you get this. Horse industry, you get something else. But the reality is, now we hear from our Senate President that it could be anywhere from 20 to 30%. So if you have Moody's indicating to you that you're going to lose $350 to $500 million, you have at the most $500 million of new gross revenue that we don't know what it's going to be taxed at, but even if you took the higher 50%, you're still losing money for the state. Wouldn't you want to know what the tax rate is? And wouldn't you want to be able to educate your constituents, the families that live in your neighborhoods, and say to them, I did my job, I made sure we got a tax rate, I made sure that we knew what the revenue was, so that they can make an intelligent decision. And if there is a study that disagrees, then share that with your constituents. So the last part of the 3 questions, of course, is who's going to pay for the infrastructure repairs? And when we talk about the infrastructure repairs, we're talking about, we already know that around the Meadowlands and in Jersey City, there are serious problems with the roadways and the infrastructure. We all know that our Transportation Trust Fund has issues. I hear repeatedly how at the end of June it's out of money. So shouldn't we know how we're paying for that? You know, we get so excited over this panacea promised by some rich people with casinos, and some other rich people are trying to get more rich off of the casinos. That was off the bill? Okay. That was, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, I think these are fair questions. All three of them are fair. And I'm going to press my button again. Hopefully it'll let me say one last thing. But I truly appreciate each one of you. I'm sure you'll take the time and give this thoughtful consideration. I know you understand that this affects thousands of families, particularly in South Jersey, that are hurting. And they're hurting bad, and they're a little scared and a little confused over why we're having this conversation. Again, I thank you very much. I urge you all to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of things said, and boy, I very much respect our former speaker and her relationship with Atlantic County as a lifetime member of the NAACP of Atlantic City with a 23-year history of supporting and helping people in the community. I understand everything that you're saying, and that is why it's important to me that we point out that a lot of the things that are being said, I think Ben Franklin said, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And I know everybody has an opinion, and Atlantic City went downhill because of this. You walk around the neighborhood where I live, and I got 100 people telling me why it didn't do well. So we all agree that it's not, but I look to the experts. And I look to them, and what do they say? And they tell us that the main reason it's not doing well is competitive gaming. Pennsylvania's own governing body determined in their own study it doesn't make sense to open more casinos or just shuffling the deck. I agree, and we point out that there are people who live in northern Jersey who are coming to Atlantic City. And yes, there are a handful to 100 or whatever it may be of them, but the studies indicate not enough to overcome the ultimate loss to the state and the money that we lose. So I would just say, if we look to the facts and can suspend our emotions, although obviously I'm rather emotional about this, but if we can, we would do better. And I also want to point out something else. The Freehold Raceway. The Freehold Raceway. They came to the committee and said, don't vote for this. The Freehold Raceway. That's the horsemen, and what they said was, what's the impact to each New Jersey resident the way this bill is? The loss of $1 billion industry, the closure of racetracks, and the marketplace for horse farms and related commodities. That's Freehold Raceway. So again, they're looking at it factually. When somebody stands up and says, we can mutually work together. Sure, in a fairy tale, if we ignore the actual studies and all the reports that say if you build in an oversaturated market, they will not come. We have not one study to tell us they will. It also tells us that you're going to lose 15,000 more jobs. The most you're going to get is 500 million, and we don't even know what the tax rate will be. So I with deep respect, I bring up that point. And then, you know, and this is it. This is the last thing. I got 5 minutes. I come back. We'll see. But what we have right now is they just did a study, even with limited information. The Eagleton polls show that 49% of New Jerseyans oppose expanding gaming. These numbers remain on track from a series of public polls on the issue from 2014. And Fairleigh Dickinson polls showed 56% of the voters oppose expanding gaming. So while there are some wealthy people, there are some special interests. I would argue to you that if we just look at the facts and we look at families and we look at what we're proposing to do, we're not looking out for all those families. And I would say to you that your own public says we don't want it. So with the money, the time, and the energy to put it on the ballot when all the studies say it would be mistaken in the first place, I would just, again, point out there are three questions. What's the revenue, and how do we know that? And what's the tax rate, and who's going to pay for the infrastructure? And I thank you all again. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.